To play video games, the main feature that this TV has, in my opinion, is black frame insertion, Motion Pro. And I'm sure a lot of people don't use it because it's too dim. Look at this image I have here. It looks with the same luminance level with black frame insertion, the same overall luminance level, that without it. And I'm gonna show you how to get that result. So what is black frame insertion? I have my my CRT monitor. This is black frame insertion. So a lot of people still pay a lot of money for CRT monitors because they are perfection in movement. They do have some trailing artifacts, so I think this is gonna give you a cleaner motion resolution, not as good, but a lot cleaner. And at 60 frames with black frame insertion, Motion Pro, if you are using a console or a PC, this is going to give you a much more clear image in movement, much more clear than playing the game at 120 frames. I know that for a fact. I tested that with my high-end gaming PC. It's not even close. You can get 120 frames in a game, but because this is a sample and hold display, is our eyes. Some people say, oh, there's no problem with the displays, the problem is our eyes. Sorry, I disagree. We do the displays for our eyes so they look good to us. It doesn't matter what the display is doing. So the problem is that it's called retinal persistence blur, basically. So our eyes cannot perceive that motion, that resolution in motion, because basically it's like the retina in our eyes still see the previous image. So when the new ones comes, it's like it cannot distinguish that very well. So this black frame insertion is going to clear that retina and is going to allow us to perceive the resolution in movement. This is amazing. But the problem is you turn it on and you cannot see. So here's the solution. I've been talking about how amazing HLG HDR is, but for me, this is the absolute most important thing about it. It is going to allow you to use Motion Pro with amazing luminance level. Look at this image. I'm going to compare for you without it, and you will see it's the same luminance level. So very easy. You turn on HLG HDR. I'm gonna show you if this is the first video you watch. You step here, 111, 3, 111. You're going to come to this secret menu, and you're going to change this EOTF from auto to HLG. So to use black frame insertion, what we're gonna do is go to brightness and change the tone mapping to on. That's it. So let me show you. Right now, black frame insertion is on. Let me show you. I'm gonna turn it off. Let me change the tone mapping, and I'm going to turn off black frame insertion. And you will see the luminance level is about the same. So look at this. This is HLG HDR with dynamic tone mapping off, which gives you the biggest dynamic range on that HLG HDR setting. And this look at this luminance level. This looks amazing, especially the highlights are a lot higher, more impactful. These light sources are a lot more impactful. But look at the overall luminance of the image. Look at this. You see? So I'm gonna show you now when I change it to black frame insertion and dynamic tone mapping on, and it's the same to my eyes. I'm sure if you measure it, it might be a slight difference, but let me show you. And this is incredible. You cannot get this result in any other way. And I even tried with the color control app, I even tried to force that white subpixel to high on SDR, and still it's not good enough. And also the image looks a lot more flat. So let's take a look at this. We change the tone mapping to on with black frame insertion on high. And let's take a look at this. It's the same, it's not more luminance, it's not less, it's the same luminance level. This setting is like designed perfect for black frame insertion. I don't know how the LG engineers are missing this. For me, there should be a toggle on this menu. You come here, game optimizer mode. You come here to Motion Pro. There should be a toggle there to activate HLG HDR on SDR with dynamic tone mapping on. If they do that, people are gonna come here, Motion Pro, oh, this is too dark. But then they turn that on and they're gonna say, wow, this, you know, same luminance, and now I move the camera and it looks perfect in movement. This looks beautiful. You really need to try this. After you see how good this looks in movement to play video games, I cannot turn this off. I cannot. It has to be a game like, for example, God of War. God of War is like, the camera is not moving, it's like this. It's like over the shoulder, third person. When you move the camera, it's like, you know, you're never doing this, you're never panning, you know? So I do get a more impactful HDR using HLG with dynamic tone mapping off. And I can get on God of War, I can get 100 frames. So yeah, I might use it in that way. But after you see how good this looks, this is incredible. So now you have amazing motion resolution. It's just like CRTs and plasma TVs. The plasma, it is amazing also in movement. So now you have that, you have the perfect luminance level, and you have HDR. So the highlights, for example, the light sources are not as impactful, okay? But because our eyes don't perceive the brightness like in a linear way, for example, I was measuring on GTA 5, the sun was with HLG HDR, dynamic tone mapping off, the sun was about 800 nits. And when I do this option, so dynamic tone mapping on and black frame insertion, the sun is like 400 nits. So you would say, oh, that's a lot. You're losing half of the luminance. But the way our eyes perceive that brightness works this way. You get 100 nits, and then you get 200 nits, and that looks brighter. For the next step, you need to get 400 nits. That looks brighter. It's called like steps. That is coming from the photography world. So basically, from 400 to 800 nits, it is one step of difference. It is not twice as bright. You know, we don't perceive that huge. So what you're going to notice is the same HDR effect as with HLG dynamic tone mapping off, but now with Motion Pro, you don't get the pop from the highlights. You're not gonna get that super pop impactful, but you are still going to get an HDR effect, in my opinion. So for example, that light, if I do this is the way I test how it pops. So if I do this, I can definitely feel the strain on my eyes a little bit, not as much, but a little bit. So it's still giving you the HDR effect. So the only consideration, sometimes when you use black frame insertion at 60 hertz, you can see flicker. So what is that flicker? It's basically this. is, imagine the light is coming to you, but there's a black, this is it's doing this, you know? The pixel is like on off, on off, on off. And that's what clears that retinal persistence. So it's not that bad. You don't see it that bad. So for example, if you go to a game like Metro Exodus, on the snow, during the day, most of the screen is white and it is bright. You can definitely see flickering. So you're gonna see it's flickering. But I forgive that. Because when you do this, it's amazing. Like you do this, 60 frames, okay? On a console or a video game or a PC. You do this at 60. And you just turn that Motion Pro off. And let's say you can play that same game at 120 frames. You do this. And the 120 frames is going to feel blurrier. So you're going to scratch your head and say, how is that possible? Because the only difference is gonna be the 120 frames is gonna feel a lot more responsive. So if you're playing a competitive game, that's gonna be a better option. Not for me though. 120 is still, I would still take the motion clarity because I don't care about being competitive. But this is like upgrading your gaming experience in such a huge way. Like if you think, just think about the kind of money and the kind of hardware you need to go from 60 frames to 120. That's a lot more. So for example, on this game, I have the game playing at 5K, max out all the graphics and all of that, and I'm getting 60 frames. To get the same picture quality at 120, it would take a massive upgrade, hardware upgrade. So without having that upgrade, I can already see better motion clarity in movement. So this is giving you like a 3 times perceived motion clarity. Why do I say 3 times? Sample and hold displays, baseline, motion resolution is 300p. With Motion Pro, you can get 1080p motion resolution, and even higher if you do the Motion Pro at 120 frames. So for me, this is the way I'm gonna play. 90% of all the games, this is the way I'm going to play, because I cannot turn it off. I cannot turn it off, because the difference is going from awesomeness, going from perfection to sample and hold blurriness. So I would definitely sacrifice the highlights and sacrifice a little bit of, well, a lot of that impact of that HDR impact, and go with the motion resolution. Is there a way to get both? Yes, they need to invent a different technology that is not sample and hold. They need to invent an impulse technology. And I don't know why the industry just completely forgot about CRTs and plasmas. Plasma TV was, for me, was so promising. There is a 4K plasma TV. It exists. It costs like 600,000 pounds and weight like half a ton. Okay, I know it's difficult. It's definitely very challenging, very expensive, but it might be possible. It might be possible to invent a different technology that is going to give you perfect motion resolution, perfect HDR, and also variable refresh rate. So if you imagine G-Sync, perfect motion resolution, and amazing HDR, that's perfection. So yeah, and you could even get like 4K motion resolution. That would be absolutely incredible. So try it out. You might not be able to turn it off. That's how awesome this is. And the only way to get this working based on my testings, and I was able to come here. So this is what I tested before. This is the way, before I discovered that HLG HDR awesomeness, I was doing this. I have the SDR presentation, which you can see is a lot dimmer. I have the SDR presentation, and then what I was doing is max out the pixel brightness, max out the contrast, which is going to mess up the colors on SDR, and this peak brightness that is on off, I was turning that on with the color control app, which I have a video how to do that if you want to do it, if you want to try it for yourself, and of course the gamma in 2.2. So doing all of that, it was giving me a good luminance level, but the image was flat. The image didn't feel like this. This feels amazing. This looks amazing. It looks like HDR. So, man, if you want to use Motion Pro, you're not gonna find a better way. If you find it, tell me. I want to know, because this is the way I'm gonna use it to be. But it is not possible. It is not possible to get a better option, because this is already giving you that HDR feeling. There's no black crush, zero black crush. I can even see the Batman's face on the main menu. The first time I tried, I think the OLED, the black level was not adjusted properly. But I can now see Batman's face on the main menu, which is very dark. There's no black crush. You can see all the shadow detail. There's no blowing out or anything. On the recording, you might see it, overexposed, but that's not what I see in front of me. So this is perfect. There's no way to get this better. If you know, tell me. I really want to know. So try this out. You can, if you have a console, you can watch, Digital Foundry videos and see what games have a very solid 60 frames per second, implementation, and try that out on those games. It's gonna look incredible. So if it's 120 frames, maybe it's not very consistent. So if it drops below 120, it's not going to look good, because it's going to feel jumpy. It's gonna give you judder. But if it's a rock solid 120, then that's gonna be perfection. So there you go. Try it out and let me know how you like it.